Good morning, everybody. My name is Brett Stevens. I'm the discipleship pastor here at Gateway, and I get the privilege of starting off our new series here. This is one that I'm really excited about, and I think it's a very timely series for us to be going through. We're talking about navigating doubt, and the reality is there are lots of things in our world, experiences that we have, questions that we have that might lead us to doubt. We might look at things that happen, hurricanes, children with disease, wars, and abuse, and all of these horrible scenarios that happen, and it might make us ask, where's God in all of this? Perhaps we look at questions of philosophy or science or things we've learned, and we say, I don't understand how this and God can coexist. Or maybe it's just a sort of dark, nagging feeling in the hard times of life to say, is there really a God? Am I really living my life in a way that's meaningful, it matters? Or am I committing myself to something that's fake? And guys, I want you to know, and maybe, I don't know if I'm allowed to say this, but I'm going to say it anyway. I'm not coming to you today as, a holy pastor who's telling you about something I've never experienced. I'm coming to you today as a broken man who's had his doubts. In my 7-year seminary journey, halfway through wondering, am I wasting my life and my money for something that's not real? In hard nights pastoring of churches, driving here and there and wondering, have I committed my whole life to something that isn't even real? So guys, I know what you're thinking. I know where you've been. I know these experiences. I get it. And so I'm going to make a bold statement, but I'm confident that I can defend this. And this is my bold statement. Doubt is often the doorway to deeper belief. Doubt is often the doorway to deeper belief. In other words, your faith will never be stronger if you are not willing to ask these questions, to dig deep and really wonder about these hard questions. If you're not prepared to ask yourself how a loving God can allow such harm in our world, if you're not prepared to say, what is the evidence of God in the midst of a world where we understand so much? If you're not prepared to say, how can I trust the Bible when it seems to be contradicted by this, that, and the other thing? If you are not able to ask the questions, your faith will not grow stronger. Doubt is hard, it's scary, but it is our doorway to deeper belief. And that's why we want to do this series. It's so important to us because for many of us, we never step through that doorway. We feel the doubts, and we have to shut them out to say, no, as a good Christian, I will just trust. I will walk by faith and not by sight, or whatever other platitude we want to say, anything to avoid traveling through it. But guys, you don't have to do this alone. That's why we call this navigating doubt, to journey through it together. And today we're going to start by looking at a character who has been unfairly slandered through much of history. A character who is famous for his doubting. There's a joke that it's not appropriate to tell, but it's about. So I'm going to go a different way with this. I was thinking about this and I couldn't come up with anything better, but I'm not going to tell the joke because it's not appropriate. But here's the thing. I'll say it this way instead. You all know somebody, or maybe it's an organization, maybe it's a church, who has done many good things, but the only thing they're known for is something bad. When I started my seminary schooling, I was going to a Grace Brethren school, and they talked about one of their churches over in Ohio, who 50 years ago, the pastor had an affair with the secretary and they ran off together. 50 years ago. Still, in that town, if you ask anybody about the church, they'll say, oh yeah, that's the church where the pastor ran off with the secretary. 50 years ago. Think how many other pastors have been there, the good that they've done in their community, the faithful people that have been there, and still, the only thing that church is known for, the pastor running off with the secretary. Everything else gets buried. So, those of you who are more familiar with the Bible probably have realized by now I am talking about Thomas, the disciple of Jesus, who is widely known as Doubting Thomas. Doubting Thomas, because of one particular incident in his faith journey. And we're going to talk about more of Thomas's life than just this, but let's start with the famous doubting episode, because we are talking about how to navigate doubt. And we're going to learn from Thomas how doubt can make us stronger. So this is the story. This is in the Gospel of John. And what has happened is this. Jesus has died. He has come back to life. And he's met with some people, but not with everybody. And so there's still kind of this, people are trying to figure out, okay, what does it mean now that Jesus is alive? And prior to where we're reading right now, a group of the disciples had gathered together kind of secretly. They'd locked the door. They're still afraid of the Romans coming to hunt them down for being associated with Jesus. And so they're up, locked in their room, kind of trying to figure out what comes next. And suddenly Jesus is there. And he talks to them and he teaches them, and they're all so excited, and they're sharing the news or whatever. And this is where we pick up. Now Thomas, also known as Didymus, which just means the twin. So Thomas the twin. One of the 12 was not with the disciples when Jesus came. I'm going to the next one. So the other disciples told him, "We have seen the Lord." But he said to them, "Unless I see the nail marks in his hands, and put my fingers where the nails were, and put my hands in his side, I will not believe." A week later, the disciples were in the house again, and Thomas was with them. Though the doors were locked, Jesus came, stood among them, and said, "Peace be with you." Then he said to Thomas, "Put your finger here. See my hands. Reach out your hand and put it into my side. Stop doubting and believe." And I want to pause here for a moment. This phrase is so interesting to me. Stop doubting and believe. I'm going to dig a little bit into the words. I know some of you are, could take it or leave it, but some of you are really interested in the words here. And so I want to talk about these words. The word belief, faith, trust, it's got a whole range of meanings here. The word for belief is pistis. You don't have to remember that, but that's the Greek word, okay? And the way that the Greek world or the Greek language handled opposites of things was by adding the letter A to something. So, and this is still true, and we have carryovers over these words. So, for example, if you've heard of the word apathy, the pathy part, like passion, apathy, a lack of passion. So you've got passion or apathy, no passion. Or like agnostic, you've probably heard this word. So gnosis is the Greek word for knowing. Agnostic means you don't know. So it's the same idea. So the word for unbelief, and this is the same word that in other parts of the New Testament will be used to talk about people who don't have faith in Jesus Christ, who don't follow Jesus. Unbelievers, if you've ever seen that word, is this word, apistis. So pistis is faith, apistis. But here's what's really interesting to me. The way that he says, stop doubting. There's actually, so we have just doubting is one word in English, but there's actually two words in Greek. And the words are this: generating, making, creating is the first word, unbelief. So what he says is, stop generating unbelief. Stop creating unbelief. And this is really interesting to me because we don't often think of doubt in this way, but he is saying, Thomas, you are within yourself generating unbelief. You are creating, manufacturing your unbelief. And we often think of doubt as like maybe like a response, like something happens and we'll say, well, oh, I don't know about that. Or like maybe it's a lack of knowledge or questions unanswered or something like that. But really, for what Jesus is saying to Thomas is, you are seeking a reason not to believe. But now it's time to believe. And so I want you to think about that as we go forward and talk about navigating doubt, because for many people in our lives, for many of us, there are things in our life that when we encounter them, we say, I can't go there. I can't cross that. I can't answer this. And we are generating unbelief. And if we are going to navigate our doubt, we have to have a real answer to put a stop to the generation of the unbelief, to the manufacturing, to the creating. We have to have genuine, true answers, or people will keep generating unbelief. So let's finish the story. Thomas said to him, my Lord and my God. This is he believes now. And so Thomas, this is the famous story. Thomas, too material, too logical, says, there's no way a dead man could come back to life, therefore I cannot believe it unless I see him, I touch it, I feel it. Only then will I believe. But here's why I say Thomas has been unfairly labeled as doubting Thomas, because we have other stories about this man. And his faith was actually quite strong, quite intense. Here is something else that he said and did. So Jesus is, he's with his disciples or whatever, and they've had some rough experiences in Jerusalem. People chasing him out, trying to stone him, that kind of a thing, So they're generally feeling not very well received. But Jesus has been asked to come back and heal his dear friend Lazarus. And all the disciples are kind of like, I don't know about this, Jesus. It's kind of a dangerous place. Maybe we shouldn't go back. Have you really thought about what this will take? But Thomas stands up in front of all the other ones. And I think I have this one in here, if we can jump ahead to that verse. So all of them they're all, should we do this? I don't know. It's kind of dangerous. And Thomas says, guys, if Jesus is going to go back, I'm with him. Are you with him? Let's go to and die with Jesus. So maybe he didn't feel great about his odds, but he said, I believe in Jesus. I believe in what he's doing enough that I will follow him even to my death. That's a pretty serious level of faith to have. So Thomas unfairly identified by this one moment. But let's be honest. Like Thomas, we all have things in our lives that we've encountered, challenges to our belief. The fact that he was skeptical that a dead man could come back to life should hardly be held against him. So what about us? What about our doubts? What about our challenges? How do we answer those? There are so many questions of philosophy and science and the challenges we feel in life. Today, I'm not going to cover those specific things. Today, I'm going to talk about the general path. What do we do if we find ourselves doubting? And I want to mention this. There's a flip side to this, guys. The person who's doubting shouldn't have to go through this alone, which means the responsibility for navigating doubt is not the responsibility of the doubter alone. So I'm going to give you some practical, what do we actually do? What do we learn from the story of Thomas's life? How do we actually put this into practice? What does it look like to navigate our doubt? But there are two sides to it. One is, how do we navigate if we're the doubter? And the other is, how do we navigate if we are the community around the person? So this is the first, and this is the critical point, guys. The doubting person does not have to go through this alone. The doubting person, it's not the sole responsibility of the doubting person to navigate their doubt. So with that, let's jump into these. So the first thing that I say to you if you want to look at the life of Thomas and say, how do I navigate my doubts? If you are doubting, if today you have questions, you're not sure about Jesus, you're not sure about faith, you're not sure who God is or if he's real, stay connected. Can we jump ahead to that? Stay connected. And guys, if you're the community, if someone in your life is doubting, if we're going to be a church that welcomes people wherever they're at in their faith journey, then we've got to stay welcoming. So here's what I see. Thomas wasn't with them when they first encountered Jesus, but a week later, they're gathered together, and there's Thomas. Even though he'd said, guys, unless I see Jesus in the flesh, unless I can touch that hole where the nail was, and I can say, this is really Jesus, he's really got the hole in his hand. Unless I see there where they stuck the spear in his side, and I put my hand and I say, this is the guy who got stuck with the spear. Unless I see that, I can't believe. And they said, Thomas, you're wrong, but we still want to be with you. A week later, he's there. He's still part of their crew. He's still one of their friends. He's still one of the team. We've said this before, and you're going to hear us say it again. At Gateway, we firmly believe that you must belong before you can believe, so you can become all that God has made you to be. So if you have doubts, you're welcome here. That's fine. Just stay connected. And if right now you don't have doubts, stay welcoming, because the people around you have questions, and those questions deserve to be answered. So that's the first one. My second advice, can we jump ahead to that one? Ask your questions. If doubt is going to be your doorway to deeper belief, you have to be willing to express that doubt. You have to be willing to ask those questions that are hard. You have to be willing to say, I don't know, I don't understand, it doesn't make sense, help me. And guys, if we're going to be a community that welcomes the doubter, we better be ready to answer questions. Even if the answer is, that's a great question and I have no idea. If we're going to be a place that helps people navigate their doubt, if we're going to be ready to navigate our own doubts when they arise, we've got to be willing to answer hard questions. We've got to be willing to dig deep and look for answers if we don't have them. Guys, I'm a pastor, and there are things that come up that I still have to say, I'm not sure about that. I'm gonna consult with some other pastors. I'm gonna read some the words of someone smarter than me because I don't know. So we've got to be willing to ask the questions. We've got to be willing to answer the questions. And number three, I should relate this to the story. So Thomas says, unless I can see the holes, I won't believe. But notice what he's saying there. He's saying, here's the challenge. This is the barrier for me. Dead men don't come back to life. But there's a condition. There's an answer that I would accept. See, there was this principle that we talked about when I was in school. And the idea is this, imagine you're trying to debate somebody. But you go into that debate and you say, there is no evidence that could be, absolutely nothing that could be said that would change my mind. And the other person says, oh, well, that's convenient because I also am so sure of what I believe that there is absolutely nothing you could say that would change my mind. Is that a debate worth having? Obviously not. The principle is this. It's called indefeasibility. Indefeasibility, that means there's nothing that would make me say, this isn't feasible, this isn't believable. There's nothing that would change my mind. If someone's mind can't be changed, there's no conversation to be had. But Thomas didn't have this. Thomas wasn't indefeasible. He said, unless I can do this, I can see this, I can experience this, I can't believe. Here's the barrier, but if you can overcome the barrier, I accept. So ask the question. What is the barrier? What is the missing piece that is holding you back from full-hearted belief? Ask it. Ask it. Number 3, what does Thomas do? He examines the evidence. Examine the evidence. I've told you, I've had my doubts. I've been through it. I've experienced it. But the thing that brought me back to full-hearted faith in Jesus Christ was the evidence. Because there is evidence. This is not a purely mental exercise. This is not blind faith. This is belief, trust, based on the evidence, based on the answers to the questions. And so if you are navigating doubt today, if you have questions, I encourage you, examine the evidence. And church, if you're going to help someone navigate their doubt, you'd better be able to demonstrate the evidence. Demonstrate the truth of a God who changes lives, of a man who came back from the dead, of a book, a collection really, of documents across the ages that can be trusted, of resurrection power in people today. Demonstrate the evidence. This is pretty easy to point out for Thomas because Jesus was the one who chose to demonstrate the evidence. But Thomas, when confronted with the risen Jesus, who said, "Your questions are answered. Put your hands in the holes. See my side. I am the person I say I am." Thomas examined it and he believed. He believed. So this is where we're at today. To the doubter, to the community that welcomes doubters, we've got to be like Thomas. Doubt can be our doorway to deeper belief if we'll stay connected, if we'll ask the questions, if we'll examine the evidence. Doubt can make our belief stronger. And there's one final piece, guys. This isn't really one of the steps, but when you've done this, respond. And guys, when the people around you respond, we celebrate. This is what our faith is about. This is what our faith is about. And so I extend the invitation today. If you're here, you're doubting, I invite you to respond. Not necessarily by belief, if you're not there yet. But come, find us, ask the questions. Tony, myself, Andy, all of our pastors here, we are ready. No question is stupid, no question is wrong, no question is ridiculous. We'll take your questions. We'll field anything. But come and ask us. We want to demonstrate the evidence. So I want to pray for you today, wherever you're at in your journey, that today God will respond to you. That today you can start your journey of navigating this doubt to a deeper belief. Let me pray for you. Holy God, I think of the times in my life that I have wondered if you're real, that I've questioned if I should be following this faith. And you showed yourself to be true. So Lord, I pray today for the people who are here, who are watching online, who are connected to this community, and they are asking. They want to know if you're real. They want to know if what Jesus said and did and taught is true. So Holy Lord, will you show yourself to them today? And if necessary, will you use me to do it? May I be your agent to demonstrate the reality of who you are, to help them stop generating their unbelief and finally trust in you. Come, Lord Jesus. Amen.